All right, good evening, coaches. My name is Alan Means with Head Coach Academy, and I'd like to welcome all of you coaches to tonight's webinar. We're honored tonight to have Coach J.B. Wells, the head football coach at Endicott College in Massachusetts, and he'll be speaking on building core values, team standards, and goals in a cohesive team culture. Before we get started with the webinar, I want to go through a couple quick messages with you coaches who are logged on. First, there's two different options for audio for this webinar. The first option is your computer speakers. This option is the default option. Most of you coaches are probably already listening to us through your computer speakers. The second option is by telephone. To listen to us by telephone, go to the webinar control panel, expand the audio portion of the control panel, and click on the telephone radio button. Then dial the number shown and enter the access code when prompted. A little bit about Head Coach Academy. At Head Coach Academy, we provide free live webinars covering the most crucial executive aspects of head coaching, which include planning and organization, leadership and culture, and money and people. Here's our upcoming webinar schedule. We have a webinar tonight, obviously, but then our next webinar is next Wednesday, July 16th at 7 o'clock Eastern Time with Coach Jane Albright. She's the head women's basketball coach at University of Nevada, Reno, speaking on John Wooden leadership ideas, including the Pyramid of Success. Make Sport Decals your go-to guy for helmet decals, spirit packs, and more. Their promise is to provide you with the highest quality, fastest delivery, and lowest prices guaranteed, or your order is free. Call their award-winning customer service agents today or visit them online at sportdecals.com. Colorado State University is offering college credit for viewing Head Coach Academy webinars and completing some additional coursework. 1 to 3 semester hours are available for leadership training, and 1 to 3 semester hours are available through an independent study. Please contact Dr. Rick Begker for more information. Okay, Coach Wells, right now I'm going to give you control of the screen, so just hit show my screen when you see that pop up there. Before you get started, though, I'm going to go through a couple quick messages with the coaches who are logged on. Keep in mind that we'll be saving the Q&A portion of this presentation for the end of the webinar. Coach Wells will stay at the end of the session. We'll open up the floor for questions at that time. If you have a question that comes up and you don't want to forget it, you can submit your question in the questions text box, and we'll address it at the end of the presentation. Also, you can hide that webinar control panel by pressing on the button on the left side of your control panel that has a white arrow pointing to the right with an orange background. That'll minimize the box and allow you to see the entire presentation. Now I'd like to hand it over to our speaker today, Coach Wells. Just a little bit about Coach Wells. He's been the only head coach at Endicott College with the first varsity season starting back in 2003. Over their 11 seasons at Endicott, they've had a record of 70-43. Coach Wells is going into his 24th year of coaching college football with stops at Brown University, Trinity College, Bates College, University of Chicago, and Illinois Wesleyan. They were 8-3 in 2013. And Coach Wells, looks like your PowerPoint is up and you're good to go.
All right, thanks, Alan. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in the Head Coach Academy. When I got the first email about the Academy, I was excited because I think we spend a lot of time going to clinics and learning more about our sports and the technical aspects of our sports, but there isn't a whole lot out there to kind of educate us onto maybe some program development aspects that really are so important for especially a head coach, but even for younger coaches that are trying to develop their own philosophy and what they would want to have happen when they became a head coach. I certainly know that my 12 years at Endicott, being a 31-year-old head coach when I started was a little daunting. So some of the things that I'm going to share with you here are things that were trial and error over the first part of the history of our program. I'll explain a little bit of kind of how we came to these things, and I'll actually take everyone through kind of how we talk about developing our core values, standards, and goals, and some of the maybe unique things that we do with it that I think are fairly easy to implement in a program from high school to college, and have been very, very successful for us. So just to kind of get things started, one thing I do need to mention is that I'm very fortunate to coach at a place like Endicott College. Endicott has only been a 4-year institution since 1987. It has only been a co-ed institution since 1994. We've been lucky to have the same president for nearly 30 years, and he has really been instrumental in developing our college's culture. And I think that those things have kind of trickled down and permeated all of our athletic teams. I've had an opportunity to work for 2 great athletic directors that have had great vision for what they want to see out of our programs, and we do talk a lot about program cultures and standards and goals. And I think that those things all go to all of our sports. And the biggest indicator of that is that in the Learfield Sports Directors Cup, we placed 28th out of 326 Division III teams this year. And that goes to talking about maintaining a broad-based program and having a large amount of success across both men's and women's sports. So it's not just me that have these ideas at Endicott. I think it's something that we all share as a department, and certainly some of these things that have been developed have been in concert with my colleagues, both on the men's and women's side of the spectrum. So Endicott College football, we're in Beverly, Massachusetts, so we're a small school, about 2,400 students. We're Division III, and we started football from scratch in 2002. And I put our program records there just to kind of illustrate some of the things, because in coming in 2002, we played a junior varsity season, so it's not indicated there with a record. But we started playing varsity football in 2003 and had some pretty good immediate success right off the bat. And, I think that was for a variety of reasons. An enthusiastic young coaching staff and some pretty good players that were able to recruit an admissions office that really believed in what we were doing, and obviously a president with great vision. So you can see that we kind of progressed pretty well from not even having a football in the building to being one of the better teams in our conference and having some pretty good records there. But then in 2007 and 2008, we took a dip. And when I really evaluated why we had taken that dip, it really came to the fact that we had not really developed a culture. We had kind of learned how to win and learned how to play hard, but we hadn't really developed a culture that was going to continue to perpetuate itself over the years. Or maybe I had just thought that I had cracked the code as a 35-year-old coach and said, hey, I've got the ideas here and I know what I'm doing and it's just going to run itself. And I really learned that that wasn't the case. So it was a little bit of back to the future. We looked at some of the things that we built the program on, continued to build with some new ideas, and really did more research into how we could develop a better team culture. And we immediately started to make moves and went really from that 3-7 year to having the 5-5 season, and it really took off. And in the last 4 years, we've had a lot of success. And again, this is hopefully not coming off as me bragging about our success. Hopefully it's me bragging on my players because they're the ones that did all this. But we've had a lot of success in the last 4 years, and you can just see some of the things there with the accolades that our players have won. I'm particularly most proud of the fact that part of our culture is an academic culture with COSIDA academic All-Americans and 100 all-conference selections, all-academic all-conference selections. And it's kind of neat that we've had 2 guys that were undrafted free agents in the NFL, which is kind of unusual at Division III. But, one thing that I kind of talk to the guys all about, I always bring this picture up with my players and they laugh, but my point with showing shampoo is that, if you look on the bottle of shampoo, it says lather, rinse, and repeat. And I think that that is really kind of what you need to do every year to really sink and develop and to have a lasting championship culture on your team. So it wasn't enough for me to just figure out that, hey, we're winning now, we're winning some games, we're challenging for conference championships in a short period of time. It was really looking at the overall picture and saying, what didn't I do from one year to the next that I could have improved on? How can we continue to build our culture? What are some new ideas? And never kind of sitting back on just saying it was good enough last year. You have to constantly reevaluate. The other thing I talk to the guys a lot about is this, and that's a pair of game socks. And our players, we're really fortunate. We have a deal with Adidas, and we get some really nice stuff. And I issue those Adidas game socks every year. And there came to be a point when we were 3-7 where I wasn't worried about what kind of game socks you were wearing, and the program started to slip a little bit. And to me, that just represents details, and that every single thing in your program is important. And every single person that touches your program is important. So we really take a fine-tooth comb to our program every season, and really try to evaluate what we're doing, how we're doing it, and not let anything fall through the cracks at all. Who forms your program's culture? Well, obviously the coaches form the culture. You have to have solid leadership and a vision. You have to have a coaching staff that is cohesive, and we've really been fortunate to have that at Endicott. Your captains help form your culture. They're the leaders of your football program, or your basketball program, or your field hockey team. It doesn't really matter. Our captains are selected through a really unique process of application, interview, and team vote, and that's a whole other seminar on itself. It's something that we've developed. It's very unique at Endicott. I feel it's something that I've shared with some of my friends at the high school level that have implemented it in their programs with really good success. But it really helped us get down to who should be the captain. It makes sure that the right guys are in the right spots and are being considered for the right reasons. And once we get to that, the next group that kind of influences our program's culture is our leadership council. Now, this is typically made up of the rest of the Kaplan applicants that are not elected captain. So in a typical year, we'll have anywhere from 10 to 12 guys that will apply to be captain. As we go through the process, not all those 12 will be captains. Usually it's about 3. So we had 10 this year. The remaining 7 I kept on board as a leadership council, and I would consult them time to time on program issues and questions that we had and allowed them to kind of have some input. So they did have a big hand in our program's culture. The other thing that we do is that we try to involve influential young players. And what I mean by influence is that this can be good and bad. A freshman or a sophomore might not be ready to step up and say, I want to be a captain. And he might not even be confident enough to say that I really want to be a leader. But they will identify their own classmates as who is influential. And I tell the guys that can be good or bad influence. Guys that are going to follow, guys that are going to go and follow other guys. We want to know who those bell cows are, those ringleaders. And I say that in the best way possible, but that's what we wanted to kind of identify. And it's something unique that we did this year. We issued class rosters to the freshmen and the sophomores, and we asked them to identify who was the most influential in their class. This year, guys that received at least 3 votes were deemed influential and were invited to assist us with the process of core values, standards, and goals. And that was a great way for us to develop a pool of talent that we can develop. It also showed a couple of guys that I think maybe aren't leading us necessarily the right way sometimes, but they're young, so we can kind of work with them. And hopefully now we can kind of grow a new group of leaders. And that's something that we did for the first time this year. And I'm crazy for have not figured it out to do that earlier, because it was fantastic to get some of those young guys and hear their voices as well. I think you have to define a culture, for your team and for your program, and so these were just some ideas. And I'm not going to sit there and read through the whole thing. You can certainly look at it while I talk, but very simply, a culture to me is the expression of values, attitudes, and beliefs, and is grounded in an identified sense of mission and shared goals. So it's everything that permeates your program. Growing up in the New England area, I grew up a Boston Celtics fan, and they always talked about the Celtics mystique and the Celtics culture of winning and how they won so many championships. And I've always felt that culture is the thing that you're going to lean back upon when things go wrong. So it's something that supports you without you almost knowing that it supports you. You can just see it. I think it creates an atmosphere that permeates every aspect of the team's experience on and off the field. It creates norms of acceptable behavior that can be conveyed to its members on what's allowed and what's not allowed. I think that we live in a world where there's a lot more permissive behavior that we're seeing. The kids are never wrong. Parents, not my kid, is a lot of things that I think we hear. But I think when you do establish clear norms, everyone's more likely to abide by them. All the qualities of a culture have implications on how a team functions, how its members do get along, and how the athletes and the team perform and the results they get. And when you do get that defined culture and it's understood by the members, they feel a responsibility to support it. And that's the biggest thing, is to get that really sunk in there so that the next group wants to build on the culture, the next group wants to improve the culture. And when you start getting that, that's when things really start to roll for your team. So what is culture? Ultimately, I believe that it's core values, standards, and goals added together. And I'm going to take you through almost exactly what we do with our team. So if you wanted to exactly copy this is just what we do with the team. This isn't just clinic talk. This is actual parts of the PowerPoint that we use to develop these areas in our team. So when we talk core values with our guys, we talk about that being our team's DNA. It's the thing that makes us up at the most basic level. So it was really important to find a way for us to identify what the core values were. Now, I've heard a lot that core values don't change. Your core values are your core values for the history of your program. And I disagree. I think that there's a lot of common values that your team will have over the years, but a team is malleable. It can be formed. It's also elastic. It flexes. It changes. So every year you're going to have a different team than you did the year before, just by virtue of new players entering in and old players leaving. So there's always going to be something different, And I think you got to get a pulse on what that team feels is important. So core values are the fundamental beliefs of a person or an organization. The core values are the guiding principles that dictate behavior and action, and core values permeate everything we do on and off the field. So I literally go through those explanations with our guys, and so they really understand what a core value is. We then take them, and I put this up on a PowerPoint, just like this. I put it up on a big screen. We had a group of our guys in that room that kind of were in that captain's leadership council influential members group, and we said, here's the core values. Here's a bunch of core values, guys. Look at them, study that a little bit, and kind of see what you think our team's all about, what you really feel our team is all about. Excuse me. And then I give them 3 minutes to pick the top 10. So they're going to literally take 3 minutes of their time. They're going to go through this whole list, and they're going to circle 10. And those are going to be their 10 most important things to them as an individual. But it's what they feel as an individual is important for them and the team. When that's done, I have them look at that, then I give them 1 minute to pick the top 5. So they narrow their list down. They look at the ones that they've circled, they eliminate 5, and they keep 5. They keep the 5 most important ones to them. So it starts to get tighter. When that's done, I give them 15 seconds to pick their top 3. They have to eliminate 2. When this process is finished, they end up with 3 individual core values. I then take the individual core values that they have, and we just call them out. So we just go around the room, and I look back on the big board, and I said, how many guys had, if I go back, how many guys had balance? How many guys had physical? How many guys had passion? And they'll go through and they'll raise their hands, and we can kind of see. And if somebody had it up there, we marked it down. And so at the end, we would come up with a list of core values that were very specific to the team that were the most important. When we did it, it was kind of amazing that when we whittled it down, there was no more than probably about, I think, 14 total core values that were common to the team, that more than one guy identified. So they all had kind of a general idea, and they were kind of all in the same ballpark. But we got that down to those numbers. So I eliminated everything else on the board but those 14 core values that were left, and then we did it as a group. And so I would let them as a group just kind of talk it out and repeat that 15-second procedure with the entire group, just with those 14 values. And we did get some lively discussion out of that. So you came up with, went right down and trying to get that down to 3 values with all these alpha dogs in the room. There's some arguing. Things got hot at one point, but then cooler heads prevail, and they justify why one should be the other, and maybe how 2 are kind of similar, and well, let's take this one, and they worked it all out. It was great to see that kind of team dynamic going on with all these guys in the room. And so what we ended up coming up with was our actual 2014 core values were toughness, integrity, and accountability. So it was really great to kind of see them work as a team and kind of work as a leadership group to get down to those 3 items. But then it's not good enough just to have the words. They have to understand what the words mean. And so what we did was, and this is a really important part of the exercise, is that we have to define each value. Now, what I did was, this took not one day or one afternoon. This took the course of weeks. I broke it up, and I identified the core values and let them kind of think about it and research it and kind of figure out what they thought was most important. And I brought them back a couple weeks later and said, let's define each of these values. And I said, once they were identified, we want them to define what they mean. And we broke that bigger group into small groups. So I think I had like 6 small groups working together in different parts of a room, and I just threw the value up there, and I said, let's define that and what it means. And they came up with some really cool definitions on what it meant, each of those values. And what was unique about it is that they came up with some statements that's what the value meant to them as a team. It wasn't me as a coach or looking in a book that's written by a leadership expert or John Wooden or anyone else. It was their definition. It's what it meant to them. And I thought it was a really important step because it was easier for the team to understand and accept that definition and that value because it came from their teammates. And that was the biggest thing, is it was theirs. And it became ours, not just the coaches. It's not coach said to do it. It's that this is about us. We came up with this. So our first definition was toughness. And I took all the definitions that they had, we boiled it down, and we took all those those six groups, and this is what they came up with. They said toughness was having the mental, emotional, and physical strength to stand firm in the face of adversity and bounce back when things do not go our way. And, wow, great definition, guys, really concise, something easy that they can give to their teammates, that they can teach to their teammates. I thought that was awesome. Second one was integrity. And they said that integrity was having strong morals and beliefs and consistently abiding by them even when no one is watching you. And then their second part of integrity was being a dependable man of your word. You do what you say you're going to do no matter what. So I thought that was great. They spent a lot of time putting that together. And then accountability was the final one, and it said that I hold myself and my teammates to high standards with constant communication. I will not be afraid to call a teammate out. And that was really, if a teammate is not doing the right thing, I won't be afraid to confront him on that to make sure that the team is operating at its highest level. I take full responsibility for myself and my teammates when those standards are not met. So we went through these things. We got these great definitions. And then I said, we need to get examples. And this was a really kind of interesting part of the process. We've figured out what the core value is. We've defined the core value. Now we have to give examples of what that core value looks like, what it feels like. And this was a big part of this. Was really important that we wanted the players to think about examples in different areas on campus. So very, very specific, Endicott-specific examples of what does toughness look like in the weight room, on the practice field, in the game field. What does it look like in the classroom with academics? What does it look like in the community socially? And then think about those things for toughness, integrity, accountability, and think. And they got in their small groups and they thought and they came up with some things, and it had to be specific. So it couldn't just be, well, I think toughness is this. It has to be, well, I saw this in class. The example of integrity academically was, Coach, a professor gave us an exam and then left the room, and immediately some people started cheating. But the guys that were on the team were in the room did not cheat. We showed academic integrity by doing it even when no one was watching. And so we had some really specific examples, and I wrote all those down, and I have them in a notebook. And so when we come back in the fall, we're going to be able to kind of work through this and teach the other guys in the program, the new freshmen coming in, exactly what these things mean to us and give exact examples. So I'll be able to point out to a player, hey, Christian, give me that example of what you told me it was, and I'll refresh those guys before the meeting so they remember a little bit about what they told me, so they don't get caught off guard. But they're going to be able to stand up and teach their teammates what it means with actual things that they've seen on campus themselves in person that specifically is tied to our football team. So that was core values, and that, again, that did take a long time for us to kind of develop that and work through those things. But it was a really valuable exercise. It really defined what we're all about, and I think the guys have really kind of glommed onto it. They believe in it. They talk about it to each other, and I thought that was really the key point to our success with it so far. Now, when we talk about standards, I always bring this up with the guys with Yoda. Do or do not. There is no try. Standards are different than goals. Standards are things that must be met. Must be set and met. There's got to be a concrete understanding of each standard and its requirements, and discipline is the essential quality there, because standards require effort and hard work, and they cannot be ignored or lowered. Team standards apply to everyone on and off the field. I mean, our quarterback was so adamant about that, saying that it's on or off the field. You can't be an All-American at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and be a knucklehead at 9 o'clock at night. You have to be able to do things the right way on and off the field. So standards are things that aren't going to change. Everyone's held to the same one, and everyone knows what they are. So when we went through this, we did the same procedure. I said, well, what are our standards going to be? How many do we need to have? I'm not a big rule guy as a coach. I don't put a lot of rules out there. Whatever you put out there, you just have to be willing to enforce and stand by. So instead of having rules, we have these standards. And so the first thing that they said was, we need to have definitions again, Coach. I totally agree with them. I said, we've got to really define these things. And then I wanted them to create some kind of catchy taglines so they would be able to remember them. So, for example, one of the first things the guy said is, Coach, you always say it's important to be on time. That's something that we've always heard in the program. So we need to have that. So the catch line for that is going to be, if you're on time, you're late. So they know that standard one is to be on time, but standard one is represented by, if you're on time, you're late. So we did the same thing. We said, okay, here's our standard. Here's what it means. Here's our catch line or catchphrase, and then define what that is, guys. Tell me why that's an important standard. And so this is what one of our captains and I sat down, and he said, this was his standard. It's very important to him. And so he brought this whole thing up about, it strengthens and reveals your integrity. It assures you're at your best. It shows you respect for others. I just thought he defined it really, really well. But we did the same thing that we did with core values. So it's their definitions so that they can, it might be a team standard, but it's the team's definition of it. And I don't think that these are really going to change, because these 5 standards that they came up with, it was funny because if you ever wonder if your players are actually listening to you, do something like this and ask them what the standards are, and you'll see if they spit back the stuff that you believe in. And these are 5 things that I just inherently believe in, so it was great to see them think that they were standards without my help. The second standard is they call no red lights. And no red lights is basically a standard of behavior. I have a little red light on my telephone that, I always tell them I don't want any red lights on Sunday morning after a Saturday game where the Dean of Students office or the AD or campus safety is calling me because somebody didn't act correctly. So I always tell them, hey, no red lights. But this is how they define no red lights. Be respectful, no drugs, no fighting, no embarrassing behavior, and always keep Coach Wells informed. I never want to get surprised by something. If somebody did something wrong, you got to step up and take responsibility. Accountability is a big part of our program. Integrity is a part of our program. Being a tough guy is being able to admit when you're wrong is part of it. So that was no red lights. So that was our second standard. The third standard they came up with was master the things that require no talent, and they defined those things just like I defined them, were focus, enthusiasm, effort, and finish. And this is whether you're the best player on the team, the worst player on the team, a manager, it doesn't matter. Every day we talk about these things, and they're things that permeate their world on and off the field. To be focused in the moment on what they're doing and concentrate intently, to be the most excited guy there when we're doing something, be the most excited person in class, be the most excited guy at practice. If you're not, fake it till you make it. Enthusiasm is priceless. Effort, everyone can give good effort, and everyone can finish what they start. That's a lesson I learned as a young kid, and I believe that you forcibly bring things to completion. They don't just happen. So, it was nice to see them spit back some of the stuff that I've been preaching to them on that over the past 10, 12 years. Our fourth standard is to make plays, not excuses. We want to be a no excuse culture. So we don't make excuses for ourselves, and we do not allow others to make excuses for us. I thought that was an awesome definition that the players kind of came with, and they said we will take responsibility and accountability for our actions and the actions of our teammates. And this is really important. We had a theme a few years ago of kind of a concept that whatever one person does, it affects another person. So you never act as in a bubble. You never act in a vacuum. And they kind of really believe that. And I think it helps us on campus. It helps us on a Saturday night. It helps us on Saturday afternoon. So really a good way to look at things, to make plays and not excuses. They'll define plays as that's kind of a football thing or an athletic thing, but making plays is getting good grades. Making plays is doing the right thing socially. It's just a way that they kind of have defined not to make excuses in their lives. Our fifth standard is to compete in the classroom, and the way that they define that off is just like, it's just what I tell them: attend all your classes, hand in your assignments on time, be attentive and participate, and always no hats, no hoods, no cell phones. And that's just showing respect for your professor, your teacher, that you are engaged and interested in what they are teaching you, and that can only help your grades. So those are our standards, and in large part a very similar process to kind of how we handle core values. But again, these are defined and come up with by our players with help from the coaching staff, but it is something that is really sunk in, and are things that we can ask the guys, hey, give me what our standards are, and they can come through them because they have the catchphrases. It's easy for them to kind of sing-song it out, but at the end of the day, they have this PowerPoint. They can always go back and refer to it, and their teammates will call them out on things and utilize the things in here, and I've heard them say it, which is great. The last part is goals, and I think goals are one of those things that as a coach, we can get caught up in goals. You can get caught up in going undefeated, or winning the homecoming game, or having a winning record at home, or achieving a certain athletic standard in a game. And I hesitate to use those things because I've been on teams where we have not achieved a certain goal, but we still won a game. And so you look up at the board and they got all these goals, and you missed on more than half of them, but you still found a way to win the game. Well, winning is the most important thing for during that time, and you're able to do it, but you didn't meet your goals. So I've always felt that that's a Nick Saban right there. A good process produces good results. So I've tried to always kind of steer the guys towards having goals that are process related, and we want everything to be process based, not results based. So by making our goals process based, we can kind of promote them as the creation of habits, and they're also things that they can kind of, again, apply to things on and off the field, and then that way it's not just something that happens in the afternoon at practice or on Saturday at a game, but it's something that happens all the time. So when I talk to them about goals, I say that our intention should be to develop the habit, to develop the process of the goal, and then the results take care of themselves. So once we have the habit down, that's when we turn our focus to the results that habits are intended to produce. We focus on things you can control, and we take our opponents out of the game. We make it all about us and what we do. And this was really a thing that I had a chance to read, Making the Big Time Where You Are and The Strange Secret of the Big Time, which are two great books by Frosty Westering, the legendary coach at Pacific Lutheran. And I had an opportunity to meet with him and sit down with him at our convention a while back and really talk with him about that. And that was like the biggest thing I took from Frosty was, we can't control nearly anything. There's only so many things that we have control over. So let's focus on them and let's not worry about what those other guys are doing. The players almost think it's funny that I won't mention an opponent by name. I might say that team from down there or those guys that wear that colored jersey, but they can't get it out of me, and they'll try to get it out of me, and I'll never say it because I'm only worried about one team and one team only, and that's the Endicott football team. And the process is about control and focusing our efforts where we have the most control. That's all it is. So we wanted to come up with goals, and these goals really haven't changed. I think your standards don't really change very much because it's what you're about. Your goals don't really change if they're process-based because they can be applied year in and year out. I think your core values might flex a little bit there, but for the most part, our goals have been this way for a long time. We focus on how we play, not who we play. We strive to get better every single day, and we want to win. And while winning may be looked at as an outcome, we prefer to look at it as a habit. We want to develop the habit of winning. And the guy said, well, how do you develop the habit of winning? We only play 10 games in the fall, and then you have all this rest of the time. You can win every day. You can win in the weight room. You can win in the classroom. You can win by making good choices on the weekend. You can win in a lot of different ways, and we try to show them all those things. We try to show them on how to get better every day. It's not just a football thing. We try to show them how to focus on the things that they can control in their lives and not get overwhelmed by the things that they can't. And I think that since we've gone to these process-related goals and combined them with our standards and our core values, we've really developed this culture that has come together nicely, and that the guys can buy into and rally around. And then ultimately, like I said at the beginning of the thing, that we can lean back on when times get tough, because adversity is going to hit us right in the face right away. It just you can't avoid it. It's like weeds in your lawn. It's not if they're going to show up, it's when they're going to show up, and we want to be prepared. I also tell the guys that these are things that they can apply to their life beyond sports, beyond graduation. Because in the real world, it's not college. It's not like being on a nice, bucolic, beautiful campus every day where things are pretty much controlled and are kind of nice. You get out in the real world will knock you to your knees on a daily basis, and we have to be prepared for that and be able to refocus ourselves and trust that we have a good process in our mind to live our lives. So that's just kind of where we went with that, and I put this last slide in here because I wanted to kind of illustrate when we got done with our final meeting to kind of define all of these things for the team. This was a line in an email I received from Chris Lipscomb, who's a wide receiver for us, a freshman wide receiver, and this is what he wrote to me the day after we had our meeting, and I think that this is a freshman that sat there and heard this for the first time. He was actually one of the guys that helped develop it a little bit. But after sitting and thinking about things, this is what he wrote me. He said, I was thinking about everything from the meeting last night, and I think the biggest thing our whole team needs to understand is we know what we're supposed to do and what's expected of us day in and day out. So we have to get it done or get on or off the field. It doesn't need to be more complicated or elaborated on. You know what you're supposed to do, so do it. And I think that was the biggest confirmation for me that this was a great process, and that the things that we've developed over the past 10 years are kind of coming to a nice fruition, that the culture continues to build upon itself. So now here's a freshman. He understands what we're trying to do. He's going to be more involved in trying to enhance the culture, and then he'll be the next guy to teach it to the next group as they come in, to make sure that our culture continues to develop in the right way. So that's kind of how we do it. That's a literal application of how we've developed our culture here at Endicott College with our football team. And if anyone ever had any questions with this, whether it's how we've done the core values and the standards, or goals, or our captain election system, which is again really completely unique, our off-season competition system, which I think is pretty unique. But we constantly are working on things in the off season, and I just want to say again, thank you to Alan and Head Coach Academy for providing me this opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do, and I really look forward to answering any questions that anyone has, or certainly if you want to give me a call, that's my direct office line. You can feel free to give me a call at any time. I love to talk about this stuff, and would love to help you in your program as well. So that's about it, Alan. I guess we can take questions if you want.
All right, great. Thanks, Coach Wells. Appreciate it. That was awesome. In just a little bit, we'll open up the floor for questions. Coaches, again, you can submit your questions by that questions section of the webinar control panel. Just type those into me, and I'll read them off to Coach Wells. To give you coaches a little time to think of your questions and come up with them, I'm going to go through a couple quick items here. Just real quick, a little bit about Head Coach Academy. At Head Coach Academy, we provide free live webinars covering the most crucial executive aspects of head coaching, which include planning and organization, leadership and culture, and money and people. Here's our upcoming webinar schedule. Our next webinar is next Wednesday, July 16th. Coach Jane Albright, the head women's basketball coach at Nevada Reno, is speaking on John Wooden leadership ideas, including the Pyramid of Success. Make Sport Decals your go-to guy for helmet decals, spirit packs, and more. Their promise is to provide you with the highest quality, fastest delivery, and lowest prices guaranteed, or your order is free. Call their award-winning customer service agents today, or visit them online at sportdecals.com. Colorado State University is offering college credit for viewing Head Coach Academy webinars and completing some additional coursework. 1 to 3 semester hours are available for leadership training, and 1 to 3 semester hours are available through an independent study. Please contact Dr. Rick Bedker for more information. Okay, Coach Wells, right now I'm going to give you control of the screen again in case you need to use your computer screen to answer any questions. So just hit show my screen when you see that come up there.
Got it.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Okay, first question. You talked about the Leadership Council, but what role do the captains play?
The captains play a little bit, I think it's a progressive, if you look at like the influential players at the bottom, and then the Leadership Council, and then the captains. I'll meet with our captains, pretty regularly. It's usually once a week. During the season, it's a little bit more because we're just together more. But during the off season, we meet once a week to talk about any team-related issues. I tend to meet with the Leadership Council maybe once or twice a month, just depending on the needs that at that time. If we have a team issue that we need to discuss, I'll call a meeting, and we'll all get together one night to kind of go through everything. So. But the captains play a pretty, significant role for me, just because at Division III, we can only spend so much time with the team. So you really have to have those guys engaged and involved and leading. One thing that we did do, and I will say this, I've elected captains at all different times during the year. I've elected them right before the season starts. I've elected them in the spring. This year, we started our process with the captains immediately after the season was over. With the application process and then the interview process, and then we had captains in place. We voted when the guys got back from winter break. So we had captains in place for our off-season program, and that was really important to us. So they were really heavily involved. I put a lot on them. I really do expect them to be servant leaders and to be extensions of the coaching staff. So again, I meet with them regularly. They're in constant contact with me. We live in this society with text messaging and everything else. In fact, our Leadership Council set up a group text thing where I would see all their conversations about all these different team things. They'd send me things. they're very involved.
All right, great. Thanks, Coach. Next question, kind of similar. Coach asked, is the whole team part of the core values process or just the captains and leadership council?
The core value, the process of the core values and standards, that was the influential players, the leadership council, and the captains. I thought it was important to have those influential players involved, just because I needed to have some of the younger players on my team. Otherwise, you just get a top heavy feel to the process, and then it's just kind of the same thing as the coaches doing it. I wanted to have that influential freshman be able to voice his opinion. I wanted to have that influential sophomore be able to say what he thought and be involved in the discussion with those older guys. So everybody was involved with that process. That's why we set the voting process for the captains ahead of time. So I did the influence process with the guys, where I had them identify influential guys in their class around the same time that we do the captain applications. So you're really going to get a nice group of guys right away to start working with as soon as the season's over.
All right, thanks, Coach. Next question, at what time during the off season do you start holding your meetings to start developing your culture?
We start right away. I joke around with the guys that once the final whistle blew in our last game, the team just changed, and so the team culture might have just changed. It's a little bit, a cliche, but it's kind of true. So we start right away in the offseason. So we have, when we talk about the season being over, we talk about the postseason. And for us, the postseason goes from the Monday after the last game till when they leave for winter break. We call that the postseason. And that's really the point where we really start talking about a lot of this stuff. It's where we kind of start to sink things in, because our guys are going to be gone for winter break. We have a longer than average winter break because of our college's commitment to internship and experiential learning. Our guys are doing internships in January, so they're gone a little bit further. So I can send them things that they can work on at home, that they can think about at home. So when they do come back, we're really ready to hit the ground running with a lot of that stuff. So we start right away talking about how we want to kind of structure things, who's going to be involved, how we're going to do it. And then we're really right into it as soon as the guys get back from winter break. We really start rolling with it.
All right, thanks, Coach. Next question, how do you involve your assistant coaches in your culture?
I think the assistant coaches are just as important as the head coach. They're a direct, line to the players. I learned real quick as a head coach, no one wanted to talk to me anymore. I felt like when I was an assistant coach, the guys would come in your office and put their feet up and want to chit chat, and then I became a head coach, and that didn't happen as often, and that kind of bummed me out, because the guys are going to identify with different guys on the staff, and they don't want to always go to the head coach about something, and so our assistant coaches are really vital, and I'm really lucky to have a nice blend of youth and experience on my coaching staff. I am lucky that I have some full-time coaches and graduate assistants. I'm really fortunate that a few of my coaches have played for me at Endicott. And so, we have someone on our staff has got a set of ears that someone can talk to. And so I really try to incorporate them a lot. When we get into our off season, and again, I could do a whole session on what we do in the off season and how the coaches are involved. But what we do is we divide up where we set up off season groups and teams. A lot of people do this. We're not that unique with that. But I put a coach in charge of each one of those teams. I act as like a commissioner or off season. I'm in charge of the league, and then each of those guys has their own team to motivate and to counsel and to work with, and that's really been great. So our guys, no matter if it's an offensive coach that's working with a defensive kid, or a new coach working with a veteran player, or a veteran coach that's working with a freshman, they're all kind of crossing over and getting involved with each other, and so our coaching staff is intimately involved with everything. And I sit down with them, and a lot of the stuff that we've developed, I got to give credit to guys like Kyle Sweeney out at Claremont Mudd Scripps, was my first defensive coordinator. He's now the head coach at Claremont Mudd Scripps. Kyle really helped a lot with this stuff at the beginning parts of our program, and then Tony Volpone, who's the head coach at Castleton State College up in Vermont. Was with me the last 7 years before getting his head coaching opportunity. He gave a lot of great ideas. So this isn't by any means one man's deal. All your coaches have to be involved.
All right, great. Thanks, Coach. Looks like that's all the questions we have here this evening, Coach Wells. Anything else you want to say to the coaches before we log off here?
No, I'd just like to say thank you for logging on. I know it's tough with the summer to take time out to come in from the outside to listen to some of this stuff, but I appreciate your time and certainly I left my number up there and my email address. If you do have any additional questions that you'd like to talk one-on-one about something, my phone lines and my email are always open.
All right, Coach Wells. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us tonight and your passion with us. And thanks again for all the coaches who attended this webinar. We hope to see you attend the next webinar, which is next Wednesday, like I said earlier, when Coach Jane Albright, the head women's basketball coach at University of Nevada, Reno, will be speaking on John Wooden leadership ideas, including the Pyramid of Success. That's all I have, and have a great evening, everybody.